Comments on the Magic Mountain by Thomas Mann. These are notes on how belonging, how being part of something can grow into something much bigger that even has a quality of coercion and even a quality of dictatorship. This is, of course, a book that was written around the time of Lenin, just before the Nazis came to power, and there was a big force in European society towards belonging either to the right or to the left. And I think Mann is using the Magic Mountain as an allegory on how people can belong even to a sickly institution, just by following certain rules, by having certain hierarchies, and by just abiding to the rules, even if they're unwritten. This is Not Even Wrong podcast. It's October 17, 2021. This is Krim Delco. It's a Sunday. There's no update. So for the year, we are still up 16.6%. The market's up 18.1%. We're underperforming by 1.5%. Before I go into the discussion today, just a reminder that my discussions about reading books are twofold. One is I want to keep a record of my own reading, which I think is very useful, but also, as I said many times, the purpose of this podcast is to give people a sense of what it feels like to run a hedge fund. Running a hedge fund is the knowledge business, and being in the knowledge business, you need to continuously condition your mind, and reading is conditioning of the mind. That's why we believe reading is very important, and we're not just saying it as a tool for people, but we're also giving an example, and that is we discuss the books that we read. The Magic Mountain, that's Auerbach. It's a book I'm reading right now. I'm reading it in English, even though it's a German book, and I really feel a little bit bad about it, but I also wanted to see what a translation looks like. Thomas Mann is one of the most complicated, most difficult, more deep, more interesting writers in the German language, and having this as a translation might be almost an oxymoron, but I still wanted to see how well it's done, and I have to say so far it's amazing. I'm amazed by the precision that the translator was able to convey certain sentences and themes into the English language. So the book is written, published in the mid-20s of the last century. So like I said in the prelude, it's the time of Lenin. It's the time of people combining into new things. Bolshevism, Nazism, Mussolinism, all that stuff is happening across Europe. It's either just starting or it's happening in the case of Lenin. We're about a couple of years away from the Nazis getting to power in Germany. So all these things are, of course, lingering already in society. And I think Thomas Mann is showing in his exquisite way of how this is possible. He's using the Magic Mountain as an allegory. So this is a sanatorium in Davos, and people are there because they're sick. But very soon in the book, so about 25% into the book, this is a huge book, that's why I'm talking in percentages here. So even the first 20% is almost the novel in itself. But nevertheless, so in the first, let's say, fifth of the book, you're already starting to change your perception of what it means to be sick. What exactly does it mean to be sick? What does it mean to be in a sanatorium? What does it mean to be a guest? Are you a guest? Are you a prisoner? Are you there voluntarily? All these questions start coming up, and I can see where Mann is coming from. This is, of course, this can be really well connected to Lenin. I just finished Lenin's biography, of which I've done very extensive reviews. And one of the things that Bolshevism is the same thing. It was kind of like it started somewhere and it became something, and people on that path from somewhere to something probably started asking themselves, what is this even? And are we now in or out? Or what does it mean to be in? And all those things. Now, when it comes to the notion of being sick, of course, we all have a predetermined idea of what it means to be sick, but very quickly this gets thrown overboard. The main character, Hans Castrop, comes to Davos, and he's a very proud visitor, and he makes it very clear to his cousin Joachim Castrop and everybody else that he encounters in the sanatorium that he's only there for a vacation, but he can already sense sort of a sarcastic laugh on the people's faces that he doesn't really understand and interpret very well. And it starts turning out that he gets fever, and then he also he becomes part of them, and he starts realizing that they already knew that that's what's going to happen. And there's a line in the book that says the climate up in Davos is very good to cure illness, but it's also good for illness. So it creates illness and then it cures it. And this, of course, is a very powerful statement for many things. Bolshevism is a very good cure for inequality, but it also creates inequality. The left in the U.S. today is probably trying to stop inequality, but it's creating massive inequality by doing what they're doing. So there's, namely, let's say, printing money with the Fed and propagating that. Just to use one example. So I'm very intrigued by this concept. Mann shows how Hans Castrop slowly sort of slithers into this situation of being part of the clan, which is of the sick people and not just a guest anymore. And there's a couple of lines in the book. For example, he talks about how people cheat at the dinner table about their temperature, and everybody's always taking temperature. So measuring. You try to measure everything, because if you measure something, you can quantify it and define it. If you measure something, God forbid you're up there and you don't have your temperature taken, you need to measure your temperature. That's very important. I can see that also. That is part of any kind of dictatorial or coercion type of society. Things get measured all the time. Accountants are tools for measuring and controlling other people. Measuring is certainly necessary in many ways. People in the gym measure their heart rate, their blood pressure, I don't know, all that stuff, their weight. All these measures, they're all arbitrary, and they help you be part of something. And they also coerce you in being part of that. So while they're liberating you in one way, by knowing, for example, whatever the measurement is you're trying to achieve, you know the number, you're also being coerced into being something, because the measurement is not just a result, it has a meaning. The meaning, like David Deutsch says, any kind of observation is theory-laden. So in the case of temperature and the magic mountain, the theory is that if you have a high temperature, you're part of the clan of visitors in the magic mountain that are sick. And being sick up there in this closed circle is almost an aristocratic right. You are privileged to be sick. And in order to have that privilege, you need to have a high temperature. So people cheat on the dinner table by even saying that they have a higher temperature than they actually have. And then there is a certain whisper number almost where people know that everybody's cheating. So then they also subtract from the actual number that people give a certain number. So there's a hierarchy, and Hans Castrop is very new to this hierarchy. So he cheats only a little and is therefore still at the low end of the ladder. So this is just one example of the notion of belonging. And I always said Thomas Mann, to me, he's my most favorite German writer, even though he's not very entertaining. Dr. Faustus and The Magic Mountain are very difficult books. They're not, the narratives are incredibly deep, but not very wide. So what I mean with that is that the characters, they're almost in a Dostoevskian way, very, very described in details. And you have all kinds of nuances and feelings and emotions that emanate from these characters, but not a lot of things are happening. So this is not your typical narrative that you might find in a modern novel and suspense and all that stuff. Not really. So, but nevertheless, it's a very interesting book, of course, and he is my favorite writer because he tackles the deep questions, the questions of politics, power, love, death, all these things that science cannot grapple with. Consciousness, the I, the you, all these things come up in Thomas Mann, and that's why I think he's an incredible thinker. He's a typical intellectual of today or of 100 years ago. It doesn't really matter. I think being an intellectual and thinking about problems is a transcendent thing that goes back to the Greeks and still has the same mechanism. Maybe the tools are different, the writing is different, the content is a little different, adapted to your times, the technology is different, there are telephones, there are trains and things like that. In the Magic Mountain today, you would have cell phones and all that stuff, but it doesn't matter. The fundamental sort of story or the line of storytelling is very, very is I would say substrate independent, as they like to say in physics or computer science. So let's get back to the Magic Mountain. The notion of belonging to something, which is a good thing, of course, we all want to belong to something, and also a dangerous thing. Thomas Mann clearly shows the danger in this allegory, because you can also be part of a fake identity, because And in a sense, and I don't know if that's what he said, but every kind of belonging has a fake identity as an underlying badge or something that you belong to. You can only belong to fake identities. There's no real, absolute, natural identity other than the I, the you, the actual person. And if the person gives themselves up to something bigger, in the case of the Magic Mountain, it's just being sick, and they give up their own notion of well-being and believe in the fact that they're sick, even though it's not really clear if Hans Castrop is sick or not. It's not clear. He has a bit of a fever and he has a bit of a cough, but he is being labeled as sick. He's being labeled as part of the sanatorium. This is a much more integral way of being sick. And in that same way, I can see how Mann is transitioning from the Magic Mountain, using the Magic Mountain as a little sort of Zauberberg, or as a little Magic Mountain, as the word says, and allegory to the real world, where we can slip slowly, without much fanfare, into an identity, into something that we don't really intend to be or do, without much intent or anything like that. And then all of a sudden we're caught up in this situation where we're Bolsheviks, and if we say the wrong word, we go to Siberia, we get killed, we're Nazis, we get killed. Like, these things can go very fast. Now, again, I'm only 25% in the book. I don't know what's going to happen, but I can see there is a certain danger to this notion of being sick in the Magic Mountain. I feel like, who knows what they're going to do with him, and how much they're going to sort of use this against him, but also for him. And this whole idea that the Magic Mountain is good to cure, but it's also good for sickness. It's a very dangerous concept. It's a circle that you don't want to be part of, because you want to be cured. You don't want to get sick at the same time. These are notes on the concept of belonging, notes on the concept of the ability by just human societies to, with or without rules, morph into something that coerces you to be part of something that you haven't intended to be part of in the first place, but then almost creeps up on you, or as they say, creeps up on you really without you having seen it coming, and then all of a sudden you face it. And I think we live in times today, the COVID situation is certainly one of those where a lot of things are creeping up on us now. The fact that people have the right to force you to wear masks or force you to vaccinate, things like that are being taken for granted all of a sudden, and you're almost in a two-class society. Are you vaccinated? Are you not vaccinated? Have you had COVID or not? Things like that are just popping up in society. Some societies are better able to deal with it and resist the coercion, and others, let's say Canada or New Zealand, which I would have thought are very free societies, are not. So it shows you also how unfree actually those societies are. So to summarize again, these are notes on the Magic Mountain. I'm going to have several of such notes, and then a bigger sort of formal review once the book is written. These notes are about the belonging and the ability by written or unwritten rules to creep up on you and literally sneak up on you. Actually, that's the word, and put you in a position where you're part of something and you almost don't have a choice. If you're not part of it, you're a bad person. If you're part of it, you run the danger of being coerced into something you don't want to do. Thank you.